Chapter 16. The Keepers Strike Back. The journey to rally allies took Adanna, Amora, Cunnel, and their new companions from Irua through dense forests, windswept plains, and treacherous mountain passes. Word of Adanna's defiance spread quickly, drawing both interest and ire. But not all news was promising. At every campfire, Cunnel warned of mounting keeper activity. Villages were falling silent, their inhabitants either captured or driven away. The keepers were retaliating, tightening their grip on the lands. "We're running out of time," Cunnel said one evening as they rested by a riverbank. "If the keepers consolidate their forces, even with allies, we'll be outmatched." Adanna frowned, the weight of his words pressing on her. "What can we do?" Amora's form flickered faintly in the firelight. "We draw them out. Force their hand before they're ready." An unexpected encounter. The next morning, as the group prepared to set out, a strange figure approached their camp. He was tall and lean, cloaked in black, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see straight through them. Amora instantly stepped forward, her energy crackling. "Who are you?" The man raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax, spirit. If I wanted a fight, you'd already know." Adanna stepped closer, her instincts telling her to stay on guard. "Then why are you here?" The man smirked. "My name is Torik. Let's just say I have a vested interest in seeing the keepers fall." Cunnel frowned. "You're a rogue keeper." Torik's smile widened. "Former keeper. I walked away when I realized their vision of balance was just a fancy way of saying control." Amora narrowed her eyes. "And why should we trust you?" "Because I know their plans," Torik replied. "And without me, you'll be walking straight into a trap." Adanna studied him carefully. He didn't seem like someone who could be easily trusted, but there was a spark of truth in his words. "What do you know?" "The keepers are gathering their forces at the ruins of Narrowen," Torik said. "They're preparing a ritual, something big. If they pull it off, you won't stand a chance." The decision. Back at the camp, the group debated Torik's offer. "We can't trust him," Amora insisted. "If he's lying, he could lead us straight into their hands. But if he's telling the truth, we can't ignore it," Adanna argued. "We need to know what they're planning." Cunnel stroked his beard thoughtfully. "It's a risk either way. But the ruins of Narrowen. If the keepers are gathering there, it could be our best chance to strike." Finally, the group reached a consensus. They would follow Torik to the ruins, but with caution. "If you betray us," Amora warned, her voice sharp, "you won't live to regret it." Torik simply shrugged. "Fair enough." The ruins of Narrowen. The ruins of Narrowen were a desolate expanse of crumbling stone and twisted spires, bathed in an eerie red light. The air was thick with energy, making it hard to breathe. As they approached, Torik pointed to a central structure, a massive tower glowing with dark energy. "That's where they'll be. If they complete the ritual, they'll summon something, not of this world." Adanna's chest tightened. "We have to stop them." The group moved cautiously through the ruins, avoiding keeper patrols and wraith-like creatures that prowled the shadows. When they reached the tower, they saw Cain standing at its base, his blade glowing with malevolent power. "He's waiting for us," Amora said grimly. "We have to split up," Cunnel suggested. "Amora and I will handle the keepers outside. Adanna, you and Torik go after the ritualists inside." Adanna hesitated but nodded. "Be careful." Inside the tower. The interior of the tower was a labyrinth of dark corridors and spiraling staircases. The energy grew stronger with every step, pulling at Adanna's senses like a siren's call. "We're close," Torik said, his voice low. They reached the top of the tower, where a group of hooded figures stood around a glowing sigil etched into the floor. The air crackled with power as they chanted in an ancient tongue. One of the figures turned, revealing a gaunt face and eyes that burned with an unnatural light. "You're too late," he said, his voice echoing unnaturally. "The veil will fall, and the realms will merge." "Not if I can help it," Adanna said, stepping forward. Torik drew twin daggers, his movements swift and precise. "I'll cover you. Do what you have to do." The fight for the veil. Chaos erupted as the ritualists unleashed waves of dark energy. Torik fought with a ferocity that surprised Adanna, holding off the attackers while she focused on the sigil. The energy pulsing from the sigil was overwhelming, but Adanna reached deep within herself, calling on the frost that had become her ally. Ice spread from her hands, creeping across the sigil and disrupting its glow. The lead ritualist screamed in fury, sending a blast of energy toward Adanna. She deflected it with a shield of ice, the impact sending shockwaves through the chamber. "Now, Adanna," Torek shouted, tossing her a shard of crystalline energy. "Use this to seal the riff." Adanna caught the shard and plunged it into the center of the sigil. Light erupted from the floor, engulfing the room in a blinding glow. When the light faded, the sigil was gone, and the ritualists lay unconscious. Torek leaned against a wall, panting. "Well, that was close." Adanna nodded, exhaustion washing over her. But as they turned to leave, a chilling voice echoed through the tower. "You've delayed the inevitable," Cain said, stepping out of the shadows. His blade gleamed with dark energy, and his eyes burned with hatred. "Run, Adanna," Torek said, stepping in front of her. "I'll hold him off." "No," Adanna said, summoning her power. "We do this together." The final confrontation with Cain had begun. Chapter 17, The Battle with Cain. The air in the tower crackled with tension as Adanna and Torek faced Cain. His blade, a monstrous weapon pulsing with dark energy, seemed alive, feeding off the malevolence in the room. "I've underestimated you, girl," Cain said, his voice cold and measured. "But you're still just a child playing with powers you don't understand." Adanna clenched her fists, frost swirling around her hands. "I'm more than you think. And I'm not afraid of you." Cain smirked. "You should be." The clash. Cain lunged first, his blade cutting through the air with terrifying speed. Torek intercepted him, his twin daggers moving in a blur as he deflected the strikes. But Cain's strength was overwhelming, each clash sent shockwaves through the chamber. "Adanna," Torek shouted, barely holding his ground. "Now would be a good time for that frost magic of yours." Adanna focused, drawing on the icy power within her. She thrust her hands forward, sending a wave of frost toward Cain. The icy blast collided with him, slowing his movements as frost crept up his armor. Cain growled, his blade glowing brighter as he shattered the ice with a roar of energy. "You think that's enough to stop me?" Adanna stepped back, her mind racing. "I can't overpower him, but I can outthink him." A desperate plan. "Torek," Adanna called, dodging a swipe from Cain's blade. "We need to trap him." Torek glanced at her, dodging another attack. "Trap him how?" "The ice," she said, an idea forming. "If we can keep him still long enough, I can freeze him completely." Torek nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. "I'll distract him. Do your thing." Torek launched himself at Cain, feinting and slashing with precision. Cain snarled, his focus shifting entirely to the rogue. Meanwhile, Adanna began channeling her energy. Frost spread across the floor, tendrils of ice weaving their way toward Cain. The temperature in the room plummeted, each breath visible in the freezing air. "Now, Adanna," Torek shouted, diving out of the way just as Cain raised his blade for a devastating strike. Adanna thrust her hands forward, releasing a torrent of ice. The frost enveloped Cain, encasing him in a crystalline prison. The turning point. For a moment, the tower was silent, save for the faint crackling of ice. Adanna and Torek stood side by side, panting and watching the frozen form of Cain. "Did you do it?" Adanna asked, her voice barely a whisper. But before Torek could respond, cracks began to appear in the ice. A dark, fiery light emanated from within, and with a deafening roar, Cain shattered his icy prison. "You cannot stop me," he said, his voice reverberating with power. "You cannot stop the Keepers. The veil will fall, and you will perish with it." Adanna felt despair creeping in, but Amora's voice echoed in her mind, "Trust yourself." Adanna stepped forward, determination hardening her features. "You're wrong, Cain. This isn't your world to destroy." She reached deep within herself, summoning every ounce of her power. Ice surged from the ground, but this time it wasn't just frost, it was alive, pulsing with the energy of her ancestors. The final blow. Cain charged, his blade cutting through the air like a streak of darkness. Adanna met him head-on, her frost forming a shimmering shield. The two forces collided in an explosion of light and shadow, shaking the tower to its foundations. Adanna's ice surged forward, wrapping around Kane's blade and creeping up his arms. He struggled, his power flaring in an attempt to break free, but Adanna didn't relent. "Enough!" Kane roared, his voice filled with fury and desperation. "No," Adanna said, her voice steady and resolute. "This ends now." With a final push, Adanna's ice consumed Kane entirely, sealing him in an unbreakable prison. The dark energy around him flickered and died, and the tower fell silent once more. Aftermath. Torrik approached cautiously, staring at the frozen form of Kane. You actually did it." Adanna nodded, her body trembling with exhaustion. "We did it." The room began to shake, cracks appearing in the walls and floor. "We need to get out of here," Torrik said, grabbing Adanna's arm. They raced down the tower's spiral staircase, the structure collapsing around them. Outside, Cunnel and Amora were waiting, their expressions a mix of relief and urgency. "You stopped the ritual," Cunnel said, helping Adanna to her feet. "But this is only the beginning," Amora added, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "The Keepers will regroup." Kane was powerful, but he wasn't the only threat. Adanna nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we'll be ready. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." As the tower crumbled behind them, Adanna felt a strange sense of hope. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, she believed they could win.